Hi all, my name is Ryan and welcome to my channel What the Pop, where we discuss pop culture in general and Buffy a lot. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. If you have friends that like Buffy, share it with them. It all helps the algorithm. The usual spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Buffy at least once, I may talk about things in each episode that relate to future plot points. So if you don't like spoilers, I suggest you subscribe and come back after you've watched it all. Today we are discussing Season 1, Episode 11, Out of Mind, Out of Sight. Plot summary. Cordelia is going to be May Queen, runs into Buffy, who drops a heap of weapons. Cordy gets a bitch on, and Buffy looks sad. Charlotte from the Merchant of Venice is self-involved and whiny. Mitch is in the boys' locker room. It's just as dark and creepy as the girls. Apparently Sunnydale High can't afford light bulbs. He's a douchey bro, so we experience Schadenfreude when he gets beaten by a spooky floating bat. There are rumours of suing the school. Cordelia campaigns for May Queen. Buffy feels like an outsider. Was May Queen back in LA? Harmony gets pushed down the stairs. Buffy hears a laugh and follows. The ghost bumps into her. Angel doesn't have a reflection, which makes his outstanding hair all the more impressive. Says he can get the Pergamum Codex. Cordy saves a teacher from being suffocated with a plastic bag. Cordelia wins May Queen. Buffy heard the flute, suspects Marcy, Xander and Willow don't know her, but gave her the "have a nice summer" social kiss of death. Quantum physics! Flashback with Marcy getting ignored by the teacher starts to disappear. Cordelia says it's all about her. Buffy agrees. Being popular beats being lonely by yourself. Cordy and Buffy get caught. Marcy is a lunatic. Angel saves Giles and the Scoobies from gas. Buffy embraces her Slayer side and knocks Marcy out. Marcy gets carted off by the feds. Ends up in assassin school. While this episode doesn't get the derision of ones like Teacher's Pet, for an episode written by Joss himself, it's fairly meh. While the concept is quite good, looking back at this episode critically from a story perspective, it did a couple of unnecessary things. For instance, there was no need for any of the flashback scenes in this episode. The story evolved enough, and we know Cordelia is a bitch enough to figure out that someone unpopular would have a grudge against Cordelia. It would have helped this story if they had the audience figure this out along with the Scoobies, rather than tell us through flashbacks about Marcy. Now, the only reason I can see they would do it this way is for those people who are just joining Buffy at this particular episode and don't have Cordelia's prior screen time as a reference. But still enough happens in this episode at the start of it to give us all we need to know about Cordelia, that these flashbacks are still unnecessary. Further, the first flashback directly contradicts the whole premise. Cordelia addresses Marcy directly and says, "What do you want?" So she was seen, her existence was acknowledged, even if it was negative. It also would have made the impact of the girl rendered invisible far more powerful if the only time we saw her was a photo in the yearbook. And the whole flute thing didn't work for me either. She was in the band. She would have had bandmates, a conductor controlling her part, probably a music teacher as well. There is no way that she would have been 100% ignored. They inserted it as a way for Buffy and the Scoobies to track her and ultimately get led into the trap in the basement, but in the context of the story as a whole, it doesn't make sense. Similarly, Giles saying, "How do you decloak an invisible someone?" I mean, she's invisible. She's not Kitty Pryde. She can't just phase through things. Throw paint on her. Chalk dust. We literally see a footprint in chalk dust or something similar later in the episode. And look was written in paint on the lockers. She gave you the answer. It isn't hard to make an invisible person visible. Plot holes aside, there are some great elements in this episode. Some great lines, character development for Cordelia, the non-verbal banter between Willow and Xander, despite it making Buffy feel left out, Angel meeting Giles for the first time, Cordelia and Harmony in general, and the scene of Buffy embracing her Slayer side to locate an invisible Marcy and knock her out were fantastic. Again, we explore the notion of Cordelia as being the what if Buffy if she hadn't become the Slayer. In prior episodes, Buffy has rejected those things that made her identify with Cordelia, in which Buffy wanted to be a cheerleader again, to regain some of what she had at Hemery, but ultimately decides it wasn't for her anymore, that she had grown up a bit and moved on from there. In Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, she wanted Owen, to be able to have the things a normal teenage girl would want, and what Cordelia wanted, but realised he had no place in her life as the Slayer. In Welcome to the Hellmouth, she outright rejects who Cordelia is, the popular girl, in favour of the outcasts, which she feels she now is. In The Puppet Show, we saw Cordelia's internal strength and self-confidence in getting on stage and belting out a Whitney Houston number despite being awful. But in this episode, we see that Buffy is still struggling with that. At the start of the episode, Buffy is unsure of herself. She is clumsy. She drops all her stuff. She's awkward in the exchange that follows. Similarly, later when Cordelia says she doesn't need the Looney Fringe vote, Buffy gives a lame comeback. Her confidence is lacking. She hasn't embraced her inner Cordelia. When Xander asks what kind of moron would want to be May Queen anyway, Buffy says that she was May Queen, or at least their version of it back in Hemery High in LA. The coronation, the dance, it was nice. And this is happening while Xander and Willow are breaking into hysterics over something in their shared past, something that Buffy doesn't have yet, so she still feels like somewhat of an outsider with them. We see this reflected later in the episode, as Buffy watches Cordelia try on a dress from outside the room, looking in a rather obvious metaphor for her being the outsider. Buffy is wistful in this scene, sad that she no longer gets to do these things in her life as the Slayer. And once more, we are back to Buffy being she alone. But like Xander in the last episode, and Sid in the one before, Cordelia has something to teach Buffy, something she needs to learn before facing the Master. We learn, in one particularly poignant and humanising scene, that Cordelia herself often feels alone, despite being surrounded by people. That people are so often just trying to agree with her that they never hear what she actually says. That no one really knows her. When Buffy asks, then why do you work so hard to be popular? Cordelia answers, well, it beats being alone all by myself. Or by yourself. And in this moment, Buffy realises that her and Cordelia aren't all that different, except that destiny has led her down a different path. When they are tied up together, in a moment of Jungian and Maslow's self-actualization, with her shadow self, Buffy does embrace her inner Cordelia. She no longer feels any sympathy for the lunatic Marcy, and commands Cordelia, her what-if shadow self, to be quiet, so that the Slayer can come to the fore. In the scene that follows, Buffy zens out, embraces her identity as the Slayer, and knocks out an invisible Marcy. Lesson learned. The classroom lessons in this episode are on The Merchant of Venice, and discuss whether or not Shylock is a hero or villain. And ultimately, which one he is depends on whether you see what he did as justice or vengeance. While historically Shylock was portrayed as the antagonist, this is mostly due to the focus on Christian mercy as being superior to the justice the Jewish Shylock sought for the wrongs against his people. More modern readings have portrayed Shylock as the protagonist, and that the court scene was vastly stacked against him, with the other characters resorting to deception in order to win, making it a mockery of justice. Shylock's famous speech from this scene, containing the "if you prick us do we not bleed" line, is often used to portray Shylock as sympathetic. However, that speech is very much about revenge. Revenge, he said, he learned from the Christians. If a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his humility? Revenge. If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his sufferance be by Christian example? Why? Revenge. The villainy you teach me, I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will better the instruction. It is quite clear, through this speech and actions, that Shylock had gone beyond justice and merely sought revenge. That's why, despite being offered a reasonable payment for the default of the loan, Shylock demanded the contract be fulfilled, a pound of Antonio's flesh. It should be noted that despite being known for its dramatic elements, The Merchant of Venice is actually one of Shakespeare's comedies. So is Marcy a sympathetic figure who is seeking justice? Someone who is justified in her anger who is seeking revenge? Or is she, as Buffy called her, a lunatic? Well, I think it's quite clear that she's a lunatic. Sure, we can have sympathy for her because this was something that happened to her, not something she chose. But her actions against Cordelia aren't anything to do with justice or revenge over what Cordelia did, and are everything to do with what Cordelia has. Marcy is fixated on Cordelia because she's jealous. Marcy wants what Cordelia has. Why is there no justice or revenge in attacking Cordelia and her posse? Well, this happened to Marcy because everyone ignored her. It wasn't just the popular kids, it was everyone. No one gave Marcy the time of day. So to direct that anger solely at Cordelia indicates that Cordelia is Marcy's fixation. And we see that played out in the flashbacks. School is hell and has social hierarchies, but instead of being a band geek and making friends with the other band geeks, she kept trying to insert herself into Cordelia's posse. The first flashback we see her come up to Cordelia and Harmony, and sure, Cordelia is rude and brash, but Cordelia did something that no one else did, and that was acknowledge her. In another flashback scene, we see her trying hard to insert herself into the popular kids' conversation, and this time she is completely ignored. But for her to become invisible, one of two things must have happened. One, she tried to have conversations with multiple groups of people, and they all ignored her, meaning everyone is to blame, so Marcy has no reason to focus solely on Cordelia. Or two, she never tried anyone else because she was already fixated on Cordelia. The kicker, the absolute confirmation that Marcy is a lunatic and entirely fixated on Cordelia, is when Cordy is tied up, her face is numb. Now if Marcy just wanted her to be disfigured, she could have done that more easily with Cordy knocked out. But no, Marcy numbed her face, not to be kind and make it easier on Cordelia, but to ensure that Cordelia is awake through the whole thing. She didn't want her passing out from pain. I think in Marcy's case, it was neither justice or revenge, but jealousy and total madness. One of my favourite things about this episode is the references to Scooby-Doo, for obvious reasons. The least obvious reference is Buffy wearing a scarf like Daphne, Willow wearing a Scooby-Doo t-shirt, and Xander saying, "Can you say gulp?" like Shaggy at one point. Angel explicitly states that he can shut off the gas because he doesn't breathe. This is important for the next episodes, as he will be unable to resuscitate Buffy because he doesn't breathe. They laid the groundwork for that reveal in this ep. My favourite quote is once again by Snyder.
Guys, come on! Mitch got wailed on. I think he's
dead. Of course not. Dead. What are you, ghouls? There are no dead students here this week.
Which is extra funny, because Snyder has been principal since the puppet show 2 episodes ago, and has already lost 3 students. Dancer Emily, Morgan, and Magic Mark, all in the puppet show. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this look into the Buffyverse, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you think I missed out anything important or disagree with anything I said, put it in the comments below. And if you like my t-shirt, you can get it in our Redbubble store. The link's below. And I'll see you next time.